So just a little bit about me. I am the principal consultant strategy and partnerships for Mednol Inc. And it's a consultancy group that's really interested in harnessing productivity and creativity using AI in the workplace. And so just a little bit about Mednol. At Mednol, our mission is to forge transformative collaborations in academia, industry, and government to drive innovation and organizational success. So as experts in fundraising, storytelling, and AI, we try to empower businesses to pivot fast and then scale with fury. So the scaling aspect of business is very dear to our heart. And so we're really interested in how do we increase the productivity in our workplace and get really great storytelling and creativity so that we're able to pivot faster and increase and optimize business performances. So a few of the services that we offer are, we do a lot of grant writing and fundraising. So we draft funding applications, we plan and frame projects, including formulating achievable aims and goals. We offer guidance on designing strategies to secure grant funding. We foster partnerships with different philanthropic organizations, and we also investigate potential grant opportunities and assess their suitability. We also oversee in crafting applications for state, federal, and foundational grants. So fundraising and grant writing are at sort of the locus of the kind of consulting work that we do. And we also are really passionate about strategy and storytelling. So we're interested in developing and refining branding guidelines and visual identities for companies. We try to create compelling narratives that will engage audiences and new content that aligns with different company values for increased chances of funding and sort of also increased productivity. So one of the things that we've been doing a lot of lately is also conducting market research and competitive analysis to inform fundraising strategy, because in the public domain, if you are looking for grant funding, the landscape has changed dramatically to now include a lot of the entrepreneurial ideas that were not existent before. So even for a researcher who's writing a grant or a nonprofit organization that's trying to leverage funding, it's critical that they understand some of the business principles that are involved in strategy. And so we help organizations do that. And so that's just a little bit of our background. So this talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about an idea that came up many years ago called, what are these 21st century skills that we need to have as we transition into a AI-based economy? And so some of these skills, like learning skills related to creativity and critical thinking, collaborative skills, communication skills, all of these skills are distinctly characterized as helping to really bootstrap success. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit about the creativity aspect today. And then I also will touch on how do you increase our productivity in the workplace to be able to drive creativity. And so if you look at the research, there's only an average of about 6% of adults that have demonstrated the highest level of proficiency in problem solving in technology-rich environments. And this is a little bit disturbing, because as we move towards fully technology-based environments, if our ability to solve problems is decreasing, then we need to mitigate this situation before it gets out of hand. So AI can really augment a lot of these skills. And it can create a workplace culture that is where individuals are highly creative and also highly productive. And so the roadmap for my talk today is going to be a little bit hands-on and different from what other people have been talking about at this forum. So I'm going to guide you through some really live examples on how do we become more productive at the individual level. And given that my background is in cognitive neuroscience, the more that you increase productivity in an individual, the more that the enterprise also benefits from a productive environment. And so we'll talk a little bit about how we can do this at the individual level. And then how do we become more creative in terms of the kinds of ideas we're generating and the problems that we're solving. And then towards the end of the talk, I'll speak about what's the future looking like in deep reinforcement learning and machine learning and AI. And so how can we take some of our skills that are non-routine, very human, that are driven by our capacity for thinking, for creativity, how do those impact the future that is going to be shaped a lot by the AI tools at our disposal? So that's the roadmap for the talk. The first bit of the talk will talk about how can we increase productivity at the individual level, talking about automating routine tasks. And so here is an example where if I'm an employee at a company and I want to have a more productive environment where I'm organizing my day, people have done this with using calendars all the time, but here's a different kind of approach using ChatGPT. So you can organize task lists with the approximate time it takes to get through each of these tasks. And you can proofread your writing and fix errors, compose emails, do all of these things within an environment that is from the get-go driven by AI. So here's a prompt, a very detailed prompt that I've given ChatGPT. So here it says, I have the following items to complete today. Create a 5-page document that outlines branding guidelines for client, send out meeting invites for 3 different grant calls, eat lunch, read at least 20 pages of The Organized Mind, and take a mindfulness break for 5 minutes. Please show me in table format how much time these activities will take, and how can I organize my day to be more efficient? And so ChatGPT gave me this format where it gives me the estimated time for each task, the suggested order in which I should do those tasks. And then it tells me, gives me a list of directives in terms of how I should structure my day. And now if some other new task comes into the environment, I can always just have the history going in ChatGPT and give it, oh, I have an extra task. Can you reorganize my afternoon to accommodate this, and then estimate the time it's going to take for me to do this? So by using ChatGPT to get an estimate of time, to understand how long certain things are going to take, we can start to create our own estimates of how long certain tasks take us by having a metacognitive approach. And so say I go to write this 5-page branding guideline, and instead of taking 2 hours, it takes me 4 hours. And I tell ChatGPT, hey, instead of it taking 2 hours, it took 4 hours. The next time I go to create a document like that, it'll consider the fact that it takes me a lot longer and change my structure of my day accordingly. And you can understand that just time management, our ability to really be productive at the individual level, can really get enhanced by having some of these activities augmented by AI. And so this is just a very sort of primitive way that we can use ChatGPT to organize our day. There's a lot of other tools out there that can help you really automate some of these things. But the problem with the brain in terms of its ability to make decisions is that it doesn't really differentiate between simple decisions and complex decisions. So if you're choosing what to wear, and then you're also deciding what strategy you're going to use to get more customers, both of those tasks at the level of the brain are equivalent in terms of resource management. And so what you want to do is you want to start to automate some of these routine tasks to be able to mitigate decision fatigue. And once you do that, and you have a plan that you're just following, then your brain resources are freed up to be able to do a lot of more complex tasks that we'll get to in terms of creative thinking. And so automating these routine tasks with ChatGPT or other tools is critical to increasing productivity at the individual level. The next idea that has really shaped productivity at the individual level is this idea of intelligent assistance. So here are some windows from Augment AI. And so if you have Augment running in the background, and they're in a beta release right now, so what it does is that it keeps track of what your day looks like throughout time, right? So it's like every single day, all day. And then you can query some of these ideas that you have of, find me my recent conversation with Shannon, and it'll organize information for you. It'll tell you, these were all the emails that were sent back and forth between us. Here is a conversation that we had about grant writing. It also summarizes information for you. And it tells you on this particular day, while you were having this conversation, you browsed the internet to find information about X, Y, and Z. And so by using a personal assistant that is driven by AI that anybody at your organization can use without any of the higher level machine learning operating services or any of those things, you can just use some basic tools that are available to you to really take your productivity to the next level. And using intelligent assistance is really critical for this. And so this has really helped streamline meetings It has streamlined documentation. It has helped you make decisions quicker and get access to information that's already existing on your computer, in your browser, at your fingertips. And so increasing productivity using these personal assistants is really going to improve your daily work. So the next thing in terms of increasing your productivity level is this idea of personalizing experiences. So ChatGPT, a lot of people have been using prompts to understand how ChatGPT works. But one of the things that you can really, really do is jumpstart your learning through ChatGPT in terms of a very personalized experience. So here's a prompt. I'm currently learning about biophilic design. Ask me 3 questions that test my knowledge. And then it asks you these 3 questions, but that's not, the interesting part, because, we know how to do this sort of prompt by prompt kind of thinking with AI. However, the interesting part is that you can upload your answers to ChatGPT and say, for these questions, here are my answers. And what then you can do is have a follow-up prompt that says, identify knowledge gaps in my answers and give me better answers to fill those gaps. And then that process can now become really iterative and really personalized. So what you can use ChatGPT to do is find out what it is that you're missing in your learning experiences. What is it that you'd have a problem understanding, and just go out after those little bits of information so that you can refine and fine tune your knowledge base for all of the things that you are experimenting with learning, doing in the workplace. And so by having these strategies in place to be able to utilize AI to increase your individual productivity level, especially from this personalization perspective, because everybody learns at a different rate. And by letting the AI tell you where the gaps are, it really helps you mitigate some of the social anxiety that comes in learning in a collaborative setting. So for example, if you are taking a course or you are in the workplace and there is something that you are not really aware of, and you're just using Google search to go and try to find information, the kinds of things that are going to be available to you are not going to be comprehensive, because the information has to be sorted by you. And if you don't have as good of an understanding of the topic area, then the kind of sorting that you do is not going to be at a higher level. Whereas with ChatGPT now, it's doing that sorting for you and adapting it to your level of expertise. And I think that is very critical as you teach employees how to use AI, as an organization, you grow together, or you try to pivot from general Google search type behavior to something that is more personal and more relevant to the topic at hand that you're examining. And so here's another thing that, this is something that people have done all the time with ChatGPT, where they're using it to create content. So here the topic is, how do you write persuasively? The audience is business executives. You want a speech that's going to be under 15 minutes, and you want it to be educational and inspiring. And so here's ChatGPT, the window where it shows you how the speech would go, and then you can iteratively change it. But what I wanted to point out to you here is that the tone aspect of ChatGPT is yet another place where personalization really is brought to bear. So a lot of people, their social emotional intelligence is lacking when it comes to altering their tone depending on audience. So for instance, we all can be very professional in our tone, but can we be witty? Can we be enthusiastic? All of these general smaller gradations of what a emotional response looks like are very difficult for people to understand. And so when you get ChatGPT to write a speech for you in an educational and inspiring tone, and then you get it to write another speech for you, exact same prompt, in a professional tone, or you get it to write it for you in a witty tone, when you look at the kinds of responses that ChatGPT comes up with, you see that the tone is coming right through. And when it does, you learn how to adjust your ability to write engagingly in those tones. And so you can really expand your ability to engage audiences and your social emotional intelligence by learning from ChatGPT how it does the changes in its tone. And I think this is very important in the workplace, because a lot of times when we're communicating with other individuals, some people are humorous and other people are more professional. And sometimes there can be a lot of clashes in terms of the kinds of tones that we use in our emails. It leads to a lot of miscommunication. And so if you understand how to use different tones in the workplace, this is going to really increase your productivity, because the chances of miscommunicating information are going to go down. And so these are some ways that we can really try to apply some of these AI tools to enhance our own human cognitive abilities. And I know that there is a lot of skepticism when it comes to your jobs being taken over by AI. There's a lot of a fear associated with what's going to happen in the future when some of these more mundane administrative tasks are going to be outrun by AI. But I think that it's a lot more optimistic than that. I think that if we learn to use AI, we can really achieve peak performance as human beings. I mean, just because we got the calculator back in the day didn't mean that we stopped computing. In fact, it accelerated our ability to compute and so on and so forth. And so we have to start looking at AI from the lens of, how can I take my learning? How can I take my experience to the next level using some of these tools? So one of the things that sort of brings me to conclusion about the productivity section of how at the individual level we can use some of these tools to increase our productivity. One of the things that is really contentious right now in the workplace for businesses is that employees are using this idea of productivity theater to protect against surveillance, to show that they're working a lot. And what I mean by that is there is a difference between utilization and productivity. And so as the environment becomes more and more creative, more and more non-traditional, where employees are considered to kind of be entrepreneurs, like Patrick suggested, what's going to happen is that your productivity is not going to be measurable, because there's going to be periods of time where you're not engaging in anything necessarily. You're not in a meeting, you're not writing a document, you're not communicating with your team, but you are still being productive. And so maybe you're doing some self-learning, maybe you're reading, maybe you're expanding your knowledge base in a different way. And so what's happening with this idea of utilization, where every single hour of yours needs to be documented in terms of how you're performing in the workplace, it's actually causing a decrease in people's ability to be creative and productive. And so this FaceTime culture, where we're constantly in meetings and our calendars are overflowing, is it's going to be difficult for us to be able to innovate in those climates, because it shunts productivity. You just need to be able to have long periods of time that have been freed up by AI to be able to grow your knowledge base. And so if you start assigning some of these tools mundane tasks that you're doing in your day, like writing emails, fixing grammar, creating documents, if you can remove some of those admin tasks and shift them over to personal assistants that are using AI, then now you've freed up a chunk of time, like I had in that initial layout that I had for tasks I had to do today, to get 20 minutes of reading time on a topic, or learning to do a different kind of activity like programming or coding, and learning to collaborate with somebody, or having just a chat about how things are going in the workplace. And so by increasing our socio-emotional learning, by increasing our knowledge base, by reading and engaging our curiosity, we can really enhance productivity in the workplace, as opposed to just being stuck to this idea of utilization and how many hours have I spent talking to people on FaceTime. And so in order for us to move towards a culture of productivity from the perspective of AI, we really need to incentivize deep learning. Okay, we need to incentivize this idea that a life without contemplation is no life at all. We need people to come back to the basics of, this is going to take me a while to think about. I have to read a bunch of these documents and understand it, absorb that information, maybe use ChatGPT to quiz myself on it, and really increase my knowledge base before I can come back to you and give you a solution to the problem you're looking for. And so by freeing up some of the time from admin tasks, we can really mitigate some of the burnout that employees will face on a daily basis when they're constantly doing this sort of FaceTime culture, and then free up some more time for things that increase our knowledge, increase our productivity from a creative perspective. And so I'm going to transition over to now talking a little bit about creativity. And so there are tools out there that are using AI right now to do this kind of not just continuous learning, but collaboration and communication in a very efficient way. And I think that these tools are going to be the way that future teams really learn to collaborate, because there's not a lot of transitioning that's happening in these tools. So what do I mean by transitioning? So in cognitive neuroscience, there's this idea that task switching, so the brain, the way that it works is that every single time that you switch a task, it takes you 4 times as long to go back to that initial activity. And because that's very not energy efficient in the brain, when we're multitasking all the time, we're not really doing very well on any of the given tasks. So an example in the workplace could be that you are working on a big canvas of ideas, you're brainstorming a bunch of things. And now you're also having a conversation with a team on the side, and you're showing them, okay, you know what, this is what I'm thinking about, this is what I'm brainstorming. AI is not really into that picture, because once you've left that meeting, only then can you go to ChatGPT or some of these other tools to query them about the things that were talked about in this meeting. Now with tools out there like Format, this is a very powerful tool for brainstorming, because what's happening is you have like a dynamic workspace where the ideation process is happening in real time. And you can query ChatGPT, DALL-E, and all other AI tools out there that are currently in their repository to be able to streamline this collaboration and communication process. In fact, you can design on the fly. So you can come up with like a design of a bag, query the internet, find other bags that look like it, change the fabric of the way that the bag is made. And you can do all of this while you're chatting with other members of your product design team. And you can have ChatGPT running in the background where it says, okay, give me 3 ideas about how I can design this a little bit better. And so you're making AI a part of your team. You're making it a part of your workplace. And I think that is going to be very critical as we start to look at how much content and how much collaboration other people are going to be doing. It's going to really be determined by how they're using some of these AI tools in the workplace. Another thing that is really important from a creativity perspective, especially from the perspective of prompt engineering, is that when we first started playing with AI back in the day, there was a lot of this sort of 0-shot type prompting. So you give it a question, you get an answer. Then there became more of this sort of memory prompting, where you give it a question, it holds it in memory, gives you an answer, and then you can have follow-up questions that it's kept in memory. And then you can sort of move on to the next step, which is more of these sort of chain of thoughts type ideas where, you have a question, you have some reasoning, you have answers, and so on and so forth. So you can have many, many combinations of this kind of prompt engineering to be able to solve some of the creative problems that are out there. And so you can start to really plan, how am I going to use AI to solve some difficult problems? And by difficult, I don't mean difficult from the perspective, oh, this is a problem that doesn't have a solution. This is open-ended, like research-driven problems, but more, how do I optimize processes? How do I get it to reason for me and then use that reasoning to iteratively change my prompting behavior? So word limits and tone are absolutely critical when it comes to any kind of prompt engineering that you're doing, because it helps you digest information in chunks that you can handle. Because the way that ChatGPT and the underlying large language models are written is that they can pad information as much as you want. So if you want to take something that's 100 words and expand it to 3,000 words, it'll go on and on and on and on, and it'll do that. But you will miss some of the critical features. So I suggest that when you are doing more of an exploratory analysis using ChatGPT, you're looking at creative ways to solve problems, to try to keep the word limits short to like about 100 words, 250 words, things like that. And to keep the tone as professional and as possible, so that you are able to get a very non-biased view of how things are looking when you're asking it questions. And so here's a way that I took a process of ideation for a client, and we've converted it into how we could use ChatGPT to really go through some of this iterative thinking process for us. So consider the following scenario. You run a business that's developed an AI software. So now we're using AI to talk to AI, developed an AI software for keeping track of which groceries are running low. The software then searches coupons, flyers, and websites in a city to find the best price and compiles a list of best deals per fewest stops for the customer. Okay, so this is sort of the scenario that you've outlined, and you notice how there's a lot of detail in there. So the more detail that you give ChatGPT, the more it's able to refine the answers that it gives you. And so this is critical. So having like a multi-step, multifaceted, complex prompt is very important, because this is something that you would do in writing an email to a customer, an email to an employee, an email to a team member. You would take the time to describe all of the things that are relevant. So why not do that with AI as well? And so then you can follow up in the same prompt and says, as a marketer, how would I market the software in 5 easy steps that are less than 100 words? And then how would I communicate this marketing plan with the sales team in 5 easy steps, less than 100 words? And so when you send this ideation to ChatGPT and it's running in the background on tools like Format, what you get is some very compelling answers. So here's the marketing AI. It gave it a name, AI grocery management software. And it says, okay, you need to target your audience. You need to craft compelling messaging. We know all of these things already, but the way that it crafts it for you helps you really get like a step-by-step approach to how you're going to work on it outside of ChatGPT. So collaborate with retailers, implement a referral program. So it's given me some marketing tools to be able to go out there. And then not only has it given me these tools, now it's telling me, how do I communicate across teams? How do I go and talk to a sales team and tell them these are the things that are part of my marketing plan? So then it tells you, okay, well, you need to provide a clear value proposition. You need to highlight the selling points to the sales team. You should share some of the target audience insights, and then equip the team with some marketing collateral, so additional brochures, presentations, demos, and then foster this sort of constant communication. So you can imagine how, just as an individual working on something like this, you can really, really get the entire team on board, because you have an idea about what the other team might be thinking about. And before they come to you and do this back and forth, you're already giving them information. So once again, increasing both the creativity and the productivity in the workplace. So I'm going to continue working through some of this example and talk a little bit about content generation. So now, once we've given the sales team this plan, we're going to continue querying ChatGPT and say, could you give me the top 3 ways for targeting this audience? Okay, so the audience for AI grocery management software. So it tells me, okay, well, you can do online advertising and social media targeting. You can do some influencer marketing and collaboration. And you can also maybe partner with local charities and organizations and tell them about your software. And then, so once I get this information for it, and I want to start looking at, okay, let's look at the first part, which is online advertising and social media. Now, can you list the top 3 influencers that would be a good fit for this product? And so it's not actually giving me a list of people, even though I've asked it that. And this is where some of the limitations of ChatGPT can happen. And I will discuss with you how you can work around it to find better answers to these questions. So I asked it to list the top 3 influencers, but instead of doing that, it gave me the categories of those influencers. Okay, so it didn't really give me what I wanted, but it gave me something that I can work with, right? So I go in there and it tells me people that are food and recipe influencers. I can collaborate with them. I can talk to lifestyle and organization influencers. And I could maybe have some frugal living influencers who are into money saving. And maybe that can also be a target audience. Now, can you imagine trying to find some of this information, doing a Google search? Even if you had a team of people, it would take a few days to collate all of this, but here it's done for you in the matter of milliseconds. So now that I have this, I'm still looking for these top 3 influencers. How am I going to go about it? Now I can go into Bing and ask it the same question. Now, remember, Bing is in real time. And so if you have it running on your Microsoft Edge platform, then I could ask it, okay, what are the top 3 influencers in the food and recipe industry at this moment in time? And then it gives it to me. It says, according to my sources, some of these influencers are Gordon Ramsay, Jamie Oliver, and Rosanna Pansino. Okay, so it tells me this, but that's not it, right? Because I also, now that I'm in Bing and I want to minimize my crosstalk between AI tools that I'm using, I can continue in Bing to format and draft an email to an influencer to talk to it about this AI software that we've created. And so I asked Bing to write in paragraph format a medium-sized email to a food influencer. And it came up with this. And what the funny part about all of this is that it actually labeled my AI software to being called Smart Fridge. And I was like, that's not a bad name, right? So it's actually doing a little bit of creative thinking on its own without you having to inform any of that. I never gave it a name, but now it's given me a name. So it does that all for you. And now you can, you can do an email, you can do a blog post, you can have more ideas, you can do paragraphs. So you can start leveraging both ChatGPT to get some of this more detailed planning part, and then more of the edge to get more up-to-date information. And then you can continue adapting this email by adding a catchy subject line, mentioning some of the benefits of Smart Fridge, etc. So here you could have multiple AI tools at your disposal running in your workplace at the individual level for you to be able to get through some of these problems that you're solving. And so I think cross-referencing is very critical when it comes to using multiple AI tools. It keeps you grounded in terms of the knowledge that you're being informed by. And then it also gives you references that you can go to and track exactly what the content is there. And one of the really big advantages of using Bing is that, say, I can't click here in real time, but if I were to click one of these icons, these links, it would take me to the web page, but I wouldn't even have to read the web page. I can ask Bing to summarize the web page for me. And so these are some of the things that we can really use to become more creative in our workplaces. Now, there is this idea that one of the things that AI is not so good at is this idea of problem formulation. And so we as human beings are very, very good at understanding what some of the core problems are. What are some of the things that we really need answers to? And so if we spend some time thinking about that process and then give it to an AI tool, then we're going to be able to get really tailored answers. And so here, if the first step would be, if you have a particular problem, like a complex deliverable, then you want to diagnose it. You want to say, okay, what is the core problem that I want AI to solve? I'm solving the decision-making part of it, but I want AI to supplement that. So what is that core problem? Once I understand what that core problem is, then I can outline some of the sub-steps that AI has to take to be able to solve that core problem. And then not only am I going to do that, I'm also going to get some alternate perspectives. So I might use Bing or other tools out there to find out what are some of these alternate perspectives. And then I want to be able to give the AI a constrained environment that has context, like the audience, what kind of messaging we want, what kind of tone we want to use, some use cases, some boundaries around which it can solve this problem. So this idea of formulating problems is still very much a human-centered process. And so even though we have AI at our disposal, we're a little bit further away from being able to use some of these things in the kind of decision-making process that we're at, especially at the individual level. At the enterprise level, there's been a lot of development in having deep reinforcement learning-based AIs. But here we're talking about how do you just boost productivity, creativity, individual level within an organization. And so thinking about problems, formulating them in a certain way so that you can get the most out of the AI tools that are at your fingertips is very important. And so I'm just going to get towards the end of my talk and talk a little bit about what's happening now and how do we move into the future, right? So one of the challenges in terms of the AI tools that are available to you, there is the classic machine learning aspect, right? Which is that you give it a bunch of data and then it predicts for you what's going to happen. And this kind of classic machine learning has good uses, but it's still limited because the creativity aspect is not really happening there. The model is only as good as the data that has been fed. Okay, then you have like the deep learning aspect where the neural network is a little bit more deep. So it's able to make a few decisions for you. It's able to adapt, and it's using trial and error-based learning to adjust the kinds of answers that it's giving you and using your feedback to derive better answers. But at the crux of all of this is this idea that we're moving towards this frontier of deep reinforcement learning that can be very critical to what's going to happen in the future. And this is more of the AlphaGo type learning behavior where, in 2016, when AlphaGo was playing in the Go tournament and it won so many times, the reason that it won is because it was left to its devices to play with itself. So it had thousands and thousands and thousands of trials against itself. So it was AlphaGo against AlphaGo, and it was playing Go. amongst itself. And what ended up happening is that it came up with a brand new strategy through those iterative processes to be able to play. And because it did that, that kind of strategy wasn't something that us humans were able to necessarily understand. And so as we move towards a future where there is a little bit of fear associated with, oh, is AI going to become sentient? What's going to happen? Are we at the crux of extinction? I think that, those concerns are valid and to take up another huge convention to talk about the ethics of AI. But just even framing problems in the context of reinforcement learning can really help you increase your productivity and your creativity in the workplace. So by preparing simulation environments, by giving it the right data, I can't emphasize to you enough how having data that's labeled correctly, how it can really change model parameters later on. How do you scale and tweak the model to be able to make small adjustments? All of those kinds of things we can still do today, but we need to be diligent and constantly working on finding better ways of thinking. And so here's an example of how I did a little bit of more reinforcement-based learning with AI. So I said, here, try this. You are an AI. So I'm telling AI that it's an AI designed to help me increase sales by 5% for our spring collection of running shoes. And I wanted to generate a list of 5 prompts that will help you, ChatGPT, strategize how to accomplish this goal. And so now I'm getting AI to talk to itself, to get into this sort of more iterative process. And then, this is what it came up with, and I'll quickly read through this. It said, these are the prompts I would use if I was in that environment where I'm trying to increase running shoe sales. What targeted advertising campaigns can we implement to raise awareness and generate interest in our spring collection amongst our ideal customer segment? How can we leverage social media platforms to engage with potential customers, showcasing the features and benefits of our spring connection and drive traffic to our online store or physical retail locations? What incentives or promotions can we offer to entice customers to choose our spring collection over competitors' options, such as limited time discounts, bundle deals, exclusive rewards? And then how can we enhance the customer shopping experience for both the spring collection as well as the online offline optimizing product displays, providing personalized recommendation, and offering exceptional customer service? And then what post-purchase engagement strategies can we employ to encourage customer loyalty and repeat purchases, such as targeted email campaigns, referral programs, or exclusive access to future product releases? So these are the prompts that ChatGPT gave to me about what I should be prompting it if I want to have this goal of increasing my sales by 5%. And as you can notice how targeted, how specific some of these prompts are, a lot better than a lot of us will write prompts. And so I think that by using AI to actually learn more about itself and to give us the information that we're asking it to, we can really, really start to take creativity to the next level. And that just brings me to the end of my talk. So I'll take questions here.
The session is open for the questions. So if you have any questions, you can ask.
Can I ask a question, Zainab?
Yes.
So regarding this, right now, as of now, what is the adoption in in your company? How much are you using these tools? And do you see any impact?
We're not using any enterprise level tools at the moment, but I mean, in terms of the using ChatGPT, using Augment, we also use Otter AI and Format, we're using them daily. So it is something that it's part of our workplace, in the sense that, you start off with using these tools. Like a lot of the writers that I'm training to write grants, they have Bing, ChatGPT, Augment open in their windows, and we're teaching our employees how to use these tools because the deliverables are dependent on how efficient that process is going to be. And so we're really, really big on the adoption. And so right now, at least at the company level, it's at 100%. We only have about 10 employees, so it's small, but we've gotten every single person on board in terms of getting, using these tools.
Why I'm asking this specifically, because some companies are a little bit skeptic to use these tools in their business, right? Because maybe some of the trademarks or some of the when you are sharing with, as you know, it's a public tool, right? Some companies have actually also banned using these for your proprietary work. That's why I was asking that question.
So some of our clients, the way that I showed you information as part of the talk was you can have a very generic view as you query and do some of this prompting. And we've actually had a lot of discussion company-wide about confidentiality and privacy, because if you have clients that are doing pharma, or you're doing something that is very sensitive, the information is very sensitive, you're not going to be able to share it with ChatGPT necessarily in its like basic form, like as is. And so what we're actually getting some of the people to do is to reframe what you need by get the same information out of it. So if you're a company that's launching a drug that is related to gene therapy, for instance, and it's a very controversial topic, there's a lot of red tape, a lot of confidential information around it, what are some of the pieces of that you can rephrase, give a very generic view of, get some of the tactics and say, hey, in gene therapy in general, what are some of the tactics that are being used to market products? And then go in there and use some of these generic tools to then customize it. So you still have a team, right? You still have brainstorming. You're still doing the actual human aspect of the work, which is, figuring out how you're going to set up a booth at a conference that's, promoting a particular a pharma drug. But you can use ChatGPT to really enhance and personalize learning without giving it confidential information. And that is the part where I think that teaching employees literacy about how to go after knowledge, how to frame it in a certain way, what strategies to use, this is what's critical. So we want to open up, meetings in our company are very short. We only have a few hours a day where people are doing any kind of FaceTime culture. The rest of the time they're going out there. Even the fact that you want to remove confidential information from things, even that portion of it requires you to be creatively thinking.
Thank you.
Does that answer the question? Yeah, good.
Are there any more questions? Well, I guess that marks the end of our questions. Thank you, Dr. Zainab, for the presentation. It was really insightful.
Great, thanks.